Trust the Profits Breeders' Cup coverage is brought to you by PlayUp Racebook, the most horse player-friendly racebook in the industry. PlayUp Racebook is always your best bet.
Not one, not two, not three. That's right, we're going to cap all 5 Juvenile Breeders' Cup races for Friday on this episode of Capping the Card. Salutations and welcome, horse racing fans. I'm your host of this episode of Capping the Card. My name is Matthew Desantis. You can find me on Twitter at the handle @FailToMenace. Always great to talk to you this time of year, Breeders' Cup, and as excited as we are going to be for the Saturday races, and we're going to have a ton of content for you and Trust the Profits, so make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Make sure to like this video, comment below with your thoughts on what's going to happen on the day I'm actually a little bit more excited about. I always like the 2-year-olds. I love the juveniles. Anybody who knows me knows that I love handicapping 2-year-old races. My dad makes fun of me for it. I love looking at horses that have like one running line and trying to figure out what's going to happen next. There's so much unknown, so much potential, so much excitement. So what we're going to do today is run through all 5 of the Breeders' Cup juvenile races for the Friday card at Keeneland. So this is going to be all 5 of those. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my top pick and my top value play. I have to say, as we've been doing Capping the Card, I've been pretty profitable for all of you. I've been giving out some pretty big exactas. I think at Maryland Millions Day, I gave out a 53 at one exacta. At Keeneland before that, I gave out a 56 at one exacta. Giving out some, I think gave out a $30 top winner as one of my value picks. So you're turning a positive ROI if you're listening to me, which is, I think a positive thing to say overall. So always try to find you value. Always try to put you on the right horse in the right spot. That's what we're trying to do here on Capping the Card. We're trying to make you money. And listen, this is all free. We're not charging you to do this. So always going to be here looking out for you. Well, somebody else that's always looking out for you is our sponsor, PlayUp Racebook. They're a great company. You got to check them out. Download the app, PlayUp Racebook. If you deposit today, you will receive a 50% deposit bonus up to $250. And if you deposit $100 or more before the Breeders' Cup, you will receive an additional $25 free wager. You cannot beat that. That's a great deal. Just getting $25 in your hand. What are you going to spend it on? What are you going to bet it with? There's some really interesting horses that we're going to talk about today. So, like I said, we're going to dive into races 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 on the card. There are, of course, those undercard races on Breeders' Cup Friday and Saturday. There's a few undercard races that day as well. But we're just going to focus on the Breeders' Cup races here, but we're going to run through 6 through 10. So any pick 5 sequence you want to think about, maybe some of the value plays I give you might have you think a little bit about those. And like I said, give you a top pick and a top value play in each of those races. And along the way, we're going to be dropping some knowledge in terms of just letting you know maybe some statistics that might be particularly helpful for the Breeders' Cup, let you know some trends that might be a little bit surprising, actually. Give you one right off the top. Kentucky Downs shippers. I have to credit Ed DeRosa from Horse Racing Nation for this. He dropped this piece of knowledge the other week. Do you know that Kentucky Downs horses that made their last start at Kentucky Downs career are 0-26 at the Breeders' Cup? Now you might say, Matthew, there's a little bit of a layoff between that Kentucky Downs meet and the Breeders' Cup. And that's what I thought. I thought, well, a horse that goes straight from Kentucky Downs to the Breeders' Cup, okay, I can see how that horse might not be successful. So I asked Ed. I said, Ed, what about horses that had a Kentucky Downs start 2 races ago? In other words, they raced at Kentucky Downs, but then they came back and raced at Keeneland, or they raced at Aqueduct or Belmont at Aqueduct, or they raced someplace else before they came to the Breeders' Cup. Then what happened? 0 for 58. Absolutely incredible. So one of the things I will tell you is that when I saw Kentucky Downs in some of these horses' running lines, I'm not going to say it was an automatic toss, because there's actually one horse we're going to talk about pretty early who I like, but I think there's a caveat to that, who ran at Kentucky Downs. But by and large, that was something I very much so kept in mind. The other thing to keep in mind, Todd Pletcher, he's got a huge barn. He brings a big contingent. Get this though, Todd Pletcher only winning 8% of his entries at the Breeders' Cup. He's actually has the lowest winning percentage of any of the major trainers that come between Asmussen, Baffert, Chad Brown, Aiden O'Brien, Charlie Appleby, Brad Cox, Shug McGahee, Graham Motion. You just keep listing them off. Pletcher brings a huge contingent every year, but he usually does not win. That's something to keep in mind. Last little bit I'll give you, factoid, Aiden O'Brien, the great Irish trainer. Aiden O'Brien only winning at a 4% clip the last 5 years, 2 for 51. Now, here's the flip side of that. Last time he had a great year, guess where the Breeders' Cup was? In Keeneland in 2020. He was 6 for 9 in the money that year with his entry. So, depending on how you want to splice it, you can look at it 2 different ways. As Mark Twain said, there are 3 types of lies, damned lies, and statistics. We'll see what we end up doing. Hopefully point you some good statistics for this weekend. But let's dive right into the races and let's get into capping the card. And we'll start here with race 6, and that is the Juvenile Turf Sprint, which is a grade 1, 5.5 furlongs on the turf for 2-year-olds. And this is an exciting field. There's 2 heavy favorites that I'm actually going against. Love Reigns, the Wesley Ward horse, as well as Highfield Princess. Now, why am I going against Highfield Princess? To be clear, I shouldn't say Highfield Princess. I should say the Platinum Queen. I apologize. The Platinum Queen. So the Platinum Queen is the favorite in this race, actually. Why am I going against the Platinum Queen in the Juvenile Turf Sprint? I'll tell you why. Because I actually like the Highfield Princess in a race tomorrow, the next day on Saturday. But we'll get to there later. Why am I fading the Platinum Queen? I'll tell you. If you look at her running line, she's never run longer than 5 furlongs. Okay. So she's stretching out an additional half furlong. Something to keep in mind. In these sprints, that matters. Yes, she's absolutely beaten older horses. She's beaten mixed company. She actually qualified for the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, not the Juvenile, but because of Breeders' Cup rules, they have to put her in the Juvenile. Okay. But like I said, she's only ever won at 5 furlongs. She's only ever run at 5 furlongs. She's going again, and she drew the far outside post. Now, she's going to have a fair amount of room to run before they go into that first turn. But that brings up another dynamic, which is if any of you have ever watched turf sprints in Europe, you know this. They don't have turns. It's just a straight shot. That's a very different dynamic. American turf horses are used to dealing with this in some ways. Some of the trainers, I would also say that the big European trainers know how to handle those turns and know how to train horses for that. So just things to consider there. So it could be moving away from the Platinum Queen. Love Reigns, inside post. Wesley Ward makes all the sense in the world, but I just think that that horse is very beatable, 4-1 on the morning line. Ultimately, my top pick is Mischief Magic. This is the Charlie Appleby and William Buick horse going off at 8-1 on the morning line. Why do I like Mischief Magic? Well, first of all, Charlie Appleby is the most winning trainer at the Breeders' Cup with at least 10 starts. He is 6 for 11 in his career, winning at a 54% clip. The other reason I like this horse has been the favorite in 3 of the 5 career races he's been in. I thought the race 2-back was particularly noteworthy, a Group 3 race. It was on the synthetic, but also the race 3-back was an outstanding race as well, winning that by 6.5 lengths that day. This is a horse that's, like I said, won 3 times in 5 career races. Last time out, finished 4th behind Blackbeard, the Antarctic, and Persian Force. Now, Persian Force, you'll see, is my long shot play. I think Persian Force is actually going to take a lot of money. I don't think you're going to get 15-1 on Persian Force. But that was a very, very salty field. Aiden O'Brien's Blackbeard, that is a 2-year-old who actually already had to be retired. He would throw all sorts of fits before getting loaded into the gate. Unfortunately, it hurt himself, not doing that, but it hurt himself running, and is okay, but is just going to be retired and put out to stud. And so that was a very strong race, though. Blackbeard's a great horse, probably would have been the favorite if he had come over or close to it. But Mischief Magic, I think, has acquitted himself very, very well in the spot. Appleby and Buick is just a connection I trust. William Buick actually is the winningest jockey in terms of win percentage and from active jockeys running in the Breeders' Cup. And Then on the other side, you look at a horse like Persian Force. This is a horse 15-1 on the morning line. Rich Hannon and Frankie Dettori. Frankie, who the news just came out that he's going to be riding full-time at Santa Anita after this meet is over at the Breeders' Cup. But Persian Force is a horse you have to like. I mean, this is a horse that's run up against Blackbeard a bunch, has actually been favored over Blackbeard a few times, has never finished out of the money in its career, 6 for 7 in the exacta, 3 wins. Has finished second in two group ones, I should say, as well as finishing third in another group one. So has been running up against the very best company. Definitely like these two a lot. The other horse I would tell you to consider is Dramatized. This is another horse that's 15-1. This is a horse I think that's sitting on a big effort. Only 3 career races, 2 wins. Last time I was a little disappointing, but if you go back and look at that June 15th race, the Queen Mary Stakes at Royal Ascot, this is a horse that beat 21 other horses, including the Platinum Queen that day. I think Dramatized could sit on a big race here for trainer Carl Burke, somebody I have a lot of confidence in. Well, let's move to the next race, and that is the Juvenile Fillies. And this is where I am going to go against my Kentucky Downs angle that I was just telling you about. And my top pick is Chop Chop. Now, Chop Chop last ran at Keeneland, but before that, Chop Chop had run at Kentucky Downs and won at Kentucky Downs. However, Chop Chop's a little bit of a weird case. Chop Chop's first 2 career races were on the turf. Then Brad Cox, who has a phenomenal win rate when switching surfaces, switched this horse to the dirt last time out. And what does she do? She runs an absolutely huge effort, in my opinion. It was a horse that had some trouble from the get-go and did not break particularly well that day in the Alcibiades at Keeneland. And a field of 14th, was 11th at first call, was 8.5 lengths back early, and then made up a ton of ground, ended up closing really strong on Wonder Wheel, the eventual winner. I just thought Chop Chop looked so impressive that day. So the reason I'm kind of going against that Kentucky Downs angle is the surface switch. The fact that this is not a horse that's staying on the turf, but going to the dirt. I think that has a little bit of an impact. The other thing is Brad Cox. What does he do at the Breeders' Cup? He wins. He's winning at a 31% clip at the Breeders' Cup in his career. That is a strong effort and second only to Charlie Appleby in terms of win percentage. So I'm looking there. The value play I like in this race is the 8, Atomically. This is a horse I am really excited about. This is a Todd Pletcher horse, but it just came into Todd Pletcher's barn. Was a Jose Pinchin horse down at Gulfstream Park. I would strongly encourage you to go check out the My Dear Girl stakes win that she had last time out over Lynx, who was a 4-5 favorite. Atomically absolutely blew that horse out of the water. She is such a dynamic horse. She broke poorly that day and still managed to get herself in a good position. She's got great tactical speed. She's got a nice turn of foot when she comes from home. At 12-1 with Louis Sy as the board, you know Louis is going to give this horse a good ride. I really like Atomically in this spot at 12-1. I think you can find a lot of value there. She's a potential win bet for me. I mean, as much as my top pick is Chop Chop, Atomically, I feel like absolutely needs to be included in any of your sequence selections for Juvenile Friday. Now, the favorite here is Chocolate Gelato. Listen, that horse has done nothing wrong. Todd Pletcher and Rad Ortiz Jr. I just happen to think maybe this horse, there was a little bit of a regression in from breaking the maiden to the Frisette. Now, you could say that was the off-track conditions. Running on a sloppy sealed track could have absolutely been the case. I just am not overwhelmed necessarily by Chocolate Gelato the way some others are. I think she's very beatable in this spot. I think that I just really like the fact that Chop Chop has experience over this ground at Keeneland. And I think Atomically is just a fast rising horse that's kind of peaking at the right time. And I think has a bright future ahead of her. Not that this is going to be the zenith of her career, but I think she's a horse that just keeps getting better and better. It's kind of burst onto the scene suddenly. And she should have no problem handling the distance as well. So let's move to the Juvenile Fillies Turf. And this is one where my top pick and my value play are both big prices. These are 2 horses that I have had my eye on for the last couple of months. I'm excited about, And I just think presents you a ton of value in this particular race. I think this race in general is pretty wide open. I'm not overwhelmed by any of the favorites in this spot. You look at a horse like Last Call that won the Natalma. I think, there's a little bit to suggest that was maybe a little bit of a flukish effort. You're not sure. I mean, is this horse really tapping into something that she's, previously didn't have? So I think there's some questions there. I think a horse like Be Your Best, I think a horse like Delight are all interesting. Now, the morning line favorite is the horse Meditate. This is the Aidan O'Brien horse. Now, why am I fading Meditate? Fading Meditate because Meditate's a sprint horse. Meditate is super impressive as a sprint horse, but has only ever run 6 and 7 furlongs. And again, run in a straight line her whole career. That is it. She's also gotten beaten the last couple of times out sprinting. She's never seen a turn in her life, let alone 2. So it's going to be a different experience for her. And this is a 2-turn turf mile, obviously. Okay. So it is, for those reasons, I'm moving away from her. My top pick, Pleasant Passage. This is the winner of the Miss Griot. The Shug McGahee horse with Irad Ortiz aboard wired the field at the Miss Griot. It was over yielding turf. But she won over firm turf in her maiden and looked very, very impressive. So she can handle different types of surfaces, which is something that always impresses me. The other thing I think to point out here is the trainer, Shug McGahee. Shug does not push horses that are too young to do too much too fast. If anything, you could argue Shug kind of lets horses run into themselves a lot of times. The very famous, second off the layoff, third off the layoff for Shug in a lot of instances. He doesn't rush horses into things. The fact that he's got this horse in this spot, I think tells you everything you need to know about his opinion of this horse. So I'm a big fan of Pleasant Passage. She was my top pick at the Miss Griot and won there. I think she is a horse that is only going to continue to get better. You saw that big increase in the buyer speed figures first to second time out. I think you're going to see another increase second to third time out. Real big fan of Pleasant Passage. I'm equally as big a fan of G. Laurie, horse breaking from the number 11 position, Graham Motion horse with William Buick aboard. That's right. The great English jockey is riding for Graham Motion. He does this pretty regularly, actually. If you remember, watched Royal Ascot, Graham Motion's stud, absolutely stellar star 3-year-old Spenderella, who jockeyed Spenderella that day at Royal Ascot, William Buick. So Motion and Buick have a good connection here. G. Laurie, a horse that I watched break her maiden at Colonial and could not have been more impressive, then goes up to Woodbine in that Natalma and had all sorts of trouble that day, was just boxed in, pinned in, finally got free at the end and made a hellacious run to finish third in that race. She's a horse I really like a lot at a big price. Even if you don't like her up top, I really like her underneath, if nothing else, in your vertical wagers. So take a look at G. Laurie there in the Juvenile Fillies Turf. Well, then let's head to race 9, which is the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Grade 1, of course, mile and a 16th on the dirt for 2-year-olds. This one feels chalky. This one feels pretty chalky. So I gave you a fair amount of big values. Even for my top pick, I gave you some values. In addition to those value plays in those first 3 races, the BC Juvenile feels very chalky to me. It's hard to get around Cave Rock, the number 3 horse for Bob Baffert. Bob Baffert has won this race 5 times. Juan Hernandez is the perfect jockey for this horse, and that he's going to go out front, be aggressive. And when you look over the PPs, the reason I like Cave Rock here, the speed figures are just dynamite. But even if you say Matthew, Santa Anita, favor speed, you can't trust those numbers. They're not the same as the Keeneland times. I get it. Even then, this race just shapes and sets up so well for Cave Rock because there's really not a lot else on the lead. The only other horse that could potentially really harm Cave Rock is National Treasure, the other Baffert horse. And when was the last time we saw 2 Baffert horses take each other out? How about never? So I have a hard time thinking that Cave Rock is going to get cannibalized by National Treasure. Just don't see that happening. Okay. So I think Cave Rock just gets the trip and is able to get out in front as he wants to do and is able to just pull away from the field. Listen, I think a horse like Forte is a very, very good horse. I think Blazing Sevens might be a nice horse, but I just think they're not in the same league as Cave Rock. The value play in this spot, because this does feel like a pretty chalky race, because I do think Forte is very good. Blazing Sevens is very good. National Treasure, as I mentioned, is very good. Those are kind of your second, third, and fourth choices. If there's a horse that might surprise, I would say the number 5 Verifying, 10-1 on the morning line. This is a Brad Cox, Joel Rosario connection. This is a horse that looked like it was going to win the Champagne, actually, until Blazing Sevens made that winning move down the stretch. And you could chalk it up to the slot maybe. I thought ran very well to hold off Gulfport for second in that race. And I just think Verifying is a horse that is continuously improving, and I think is sitting on a nice race. Brad Cox, again, gets these horses ready. Like, he gets these horses ready. And the other thing is, he's firing at Keeneland, because guess who won the Trainers Championship at Keeneland this last meet? Brad Cox. So his barn is heating up at the exact right time. And I think for that reason, you can see Verifying taking that big step, because Verifying only went from an 85 to an 86 buyers that second time out. But I think, again, you can chalk that up to the slop. This is a horse that should absolutely love the distance. That's not an issue at all. This is a Justify colt, so should be able to do the distance. And I just think you're going to see a progression now that Verifying is back on an proper, fast, dry surface. So let's move to the final of the 5 Breeders' Cup races for Friday on the juvenile card, and that is the Juvenile Turf. And listen, I think I can speak for everyone when I say I just hope that nobody runs for prize money only. I hope everybody gets loaded in. I hope nobody's fractious. I hope nobody gets scratched, and everybody has a nice, safe trip around the track. I think that's what we can all say for this Juvenile Turf. But of course, this is 1 mile on the turf for the 2-year-olds. And where am I going here? I'm going back to Europe, and I'm going back to Charlie Appleby, and I'm going back to William Buick, because these guys are just good. Silver Knot is a horse I just think he's the morning line favorite. I think rightfully so. Again, I think those first 3 races you can get past the favorites. I really do. I think races 6, 7, and 8, you can get past them. Races 9 and 10 feel a little tougher to get past them. I think you can make an argument against Silver Knot, but I'm not overwhelmed by this field by any stretch of the imagination. A horse like Really Good, or a horse like I'm Very Busy, a horse like Major Dude, like I just, and the winner is like, none of these horses really do a lot to excite me. And I don't think they're all any of them are sitting on a big effort. What is Silver Knot sitting on? Silver Knot, 3 out of 5 winning. I think you can absolutely toss the effort 2 back. It was over soft ground. Clearly, that horse does not like that. And came right back in a group 3 and won at a mile. Can do the distance, likes the surface, will actually like, I think, the firm turf of Keeneland, because it's going to be nice and dry and sunny out there on Friday. So it should be great weather. This just feels like a huge, easy favorite, in my opinion. The Godolphin connection, Charlie Appleby, William Buick, hard to get around Silver Knot as my top choice. But I do think there's value here. I think Victoria Road, which is the Aidan O'Brien horse, jockeyed by Ryan Moore, I think this is a serious horse. Breaking from the inside rail, this horse is 5 for 7 in the money, 3 wins in his career, including the last 3 times out. Here's now they do their time speed figures a little bit differently over there. They have the time form rating, but get this: from third time out, second time out to first time out, 77, 83, 92. You know what else happened? 7 furlongs, a mile, and a mile and an eighth. This horse got better the longer this horse ran. This horse will have no issue at the mile. This horse is running its best efforts right now. This feels like a very strong entry for Aidan O'Brien, who, like I said, has had his struggles at the Breeders' Cup, but has run well at Keeneland in the past. I like Victoria Road at 8-1 to provide a little bit of value in this spot in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. All right. Well, those were the 5 races for Friday. Make sure to like and subscribe to Trust the Profits on YouTube. Make sure to follow me on Twitter for the handle @FailedToMenace. And hey, listen, I'm going to be out there at Keeneland on Friday and Saturday. So if you're out at the track, please come up and say hi. I'd love to see you. Love to talk to the ponies with you and interact with you a little bit. And always excited to see fans and just fellow horse racing enthusiasts. But listen, we have so much more coverage coming to you here on the Trust the Profits. Come back. We're going to have another Capping the Card that covers just the Saturday races. Colin's got a bunch of daily doubles that are going to be coming out. We got the Case Against series where we try to poke holes and make a case against the favorites. We got El Hombre giving out winners. We got all sorts of people. We got top 5 lists. We got just so much great content. So you want to make sure to like and subscribe. Trust the Profits. Follow us on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter, Failed to Menace. And again, big thanks to our sponsor, PlayUp Racebook. They're the ones making some of this possible for us to be able to turn out this much content. And if you sign up and deposit at PlayUp Racebook and receive a 50% deposit bonus up to $250, additionally, you will get a $25 free wager if you deposit $100 or more before the Breeders' Cup. So make sure you do that. All right. Well, listen, until next time, friends, my name is Matthew Desantis, wishing you a happy and prosperous day at the races and reminding you that it's now post time.
Trust the Profits Breeders' Cup coverage is brought to you by PlayUp Racebook, the most horse player friendly racebook in the industry. PlayUp Racebook is always your best bet.